Great, and we're live. Woohoo! Welcome everyone. It's Monica here with together with Sanna from the Scandinavia One team.
Welcome everyone.
Oh,
it's
sorry.
Monica
Now
here.
I
with,
always forget this
together
part.
with Sanna from the Scandinavia One team. Welcome everyone.
There. Sorry for that. So we're so honored to have Dolores with us, Dolores Cahill, who I can't in words express your knowledge and your expertise. It's just, beyond me. So I won't even try, but
and it's lovely to be with you, Monica and Sanna. And of course, we've worked very closely together since 2020, Monica, and I'm a huge fan of yours. I'm very grateful for everything you do in Sweden and around the world.
Thank you, Dolores. Thank you. And you're such a hero and such a name to spread truth and to spread honor, to have our full health around the world. So I'm really, really excited actually to hear what you have to say myself. So really, really welcome. And I mean, you are been a professor in immunology and microbiology. You've actually given advice to international bodies in the EU, to presidents, I know, and you have even been on the Nobel Committee to
the nominating committee. That's right.
Committee for the Nobel Prize
for many years. Yeah,
you have such a list of credentials, and you're very honoring the truth and honoring the self-sovereignty and self-responsibility in all areas of life. So yeah, it would be great if you would just give a few words of your background and who you are, and then we're going to hear from Sanna as well of her background and her story and how that fits into your knowledge. So I'm really
that's great. So it's lovely to be here, and also with Sanna. And we just chatted briefly with Sanna that she suffered from the symptoms of autoimmune diseases for many years. And Sanna only realized, she said the last bit of the jigsaw puzzle was the water. So what I did for many years, and I invented a technology in the 1990s to improve the diagnosis of autoimmune diseases and cancer, because I realized, as was well known at the time, that if you're diagnosed early, if there are ways that you can change your food or your lifestyle or manage your stress, that you can actually reduce the symptoms, particularly in autoimmune diseases. And so I invented a technology, and with two other co-founders, we co-founded a company that did 20,000 people in clinical trials over about 25 years.
Wow.
And what we found from the people who had the symptoms of autoimmune diseases.
Sorry, someone is not muted. Please mute yourself if you come into the call. Thank you.
So what we knew is that from everybody who had autoimmune diseases and from the consultants is that if you, that sometimes when they were stressed, their symptoms got worse, And so we then developed technologies and did clinical trials to improve the diagnosis of over 40 autoimmune diseases. And then when we diagnosed them early, because a lot of the symptoms can be chronic fatigue or whatever, but if we then got people who were definitively well diagnosed, used the blood from them to improve the diagnosis for things like an early diagnosis of multiple sclerosis or, lupus or many arthritis, the various types of autoimmune diseases. And then they went on to make lifestyle changes, look at their nutritional status, balance their correct vitamins and minerals through food, ideally. And if that didn't work, improve their absorption. And then we found that the symptoms reduced. But the key aspect now that has been discovered over decades is that the inflammation in the body needs to be there for a number of years before you get the symptoms of autoimmune disease. And then we studied the immune component to cancer, and I had multiple PhDs on it, is that a healthy working body has this immune system goes around and can identify early cancer cells. And if the immune system is working properly, the body kills those cancer cells and people don't get cancer. So for people to progress to cancer, often their immune system has to be dysregulated and inflammation for a number of years. So then it makes complete sense if you diagnose people early with autoimmune diseases, help them reduce the symptoms, then they will not suffer from the symptoms, even though they're predisposed to the disease. And then they have reduced their chance from getting cancer. And the same thing with cancer. If you diagnose it early, the treatment outcomes are significantly better. So say you could, recover 95% of people who are diagnosed in a stage 1 cancer, whereas you can only recover maybe 20% of people diagnosed late. So that's essentially, I developed these high content protein arrays. We improved the testing for about 40 different autoimmune diseases between my research and my company Protogen. And then we discovered that nutrition actually prevents people getting symptoms. And now I'm only learning now through you as well, Monica, that water and that the pH of the water, that if the body is more alkaline, that you can actually reduce the inflammation, reduce the bad aspects of the immune system, and that then reduces the symptoms like chronic fatigue and reduces the symptoms of autoimmune disease.
But that's such an amazing work you've done there, Dolores, and we have such, respect for everything that you've done. I think Tarek is jumping on here now. Tarek, are you there?
Hey, I am Monica.
Hi.
Hey.
So Tarek is another one of our top
can...
leaders. I will just see if I can pin you as well, Tarek. Just a minute. So there you go. And well, honestly, I mean, when I hear you talk about inflammation as one of the main sources of autoimmune diseases, I mean, that's one of the things that we want to spread awareness about. That's what we talk about in in all of our webinars, basically.
Be seen.
Oh, Tarek? I think Tarek is out in Bali, so he might have a bad connection. I'm not sure. You're jumping off and on, Tarek, but we'll see if you can jump on soon. But it would be great to hear from Sana, from your experience, because I think it all fits into the research that Dolores has done. So could you just tell a little bit about how you started with the water and your background, and then we'll jump deeper down into nutrition, the cells, what actually happens, in the body.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I got sick with a chronic disease when I was about 16. My symptoms started to occur, like severe chronic fatigue, chronic pain in my legs, it affected my hormones a lot. I have very poor skin quality, like really, really thin hair, and was a bit depressed all the time, and a lot of different things that I've forgotten about now. But I got my diagnosis when I was 21, and from around there, I started to eat healthier, and I started to eliminate things like sugar.
Right.
I started to eliminate things like sugar and gluten and all kinds that was said was causing inflammation, because I had this inflammation, and my mom also has this inflammations, and she had much more severe symptoms than I had. But I started to feel better when I started to eat healthier, but it was like I did all of these stuff, but still I had the fatigue, still I had the pain.
Oh, sorry, Sana, I think you're muted. I think I accidentally muted.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, I started to feel better after I started to eat better, but it was still, I did all of these things, but it wasn't enough. I still had the chronic fatigue and chronic pain and all of these things, poor skin quality. So, but then 4 years ago, when I started to drink the water, suddenly I felt much more energized, and from then on I was like, okay, must be the water. I haven't done anything else, and I've been ill for a very long time. So I started to take it seriously and drink much more, and then from that moment and like 6 months ahead, things started, the symptoms started to go away, and now I have so much energy. I can do so much in one day and still not feel tired. So that's my story.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, the water was the last piece of the puzzle, really.
Yeah, and I would love to hear Dolores' explanation on that, because as you know, the electrolyzed reduced water, like it reduces inflammation, it increases the negative charge in the cells, and it's also the structure in the water that actually comes into the cells much deeper. So what's your perspective on the water, and like how can you explain this, what Sanna has experienced, and I guess so many others in our teams change their health completely with the
So
water?
I think there's a couple of things going on with the water. So it looks like that the immune system works much better when the water is more alkaline. So that would make sense as well, because the detoxifying enzymes and pathways that the body has can work much better. So that means that there's less pressure on the body's detox mechanism, and also that the immune system is less inflamed, so it's less reacting to things, and that it helps the immune system actually repair the body when the pH is a little bit alkaline. But I think there's something else that's going on with the water as well, that a lot of the water that we have now, particularly like in Ireland, they put in things like fluoride and arsenic and mercury and aluminium. And people have been exposed to vaccinations or toxins in the food, that I think it's
Dolores
also...
Cahill har gått med i det här. Känner du till henne?
Oj, nu får ni muta ni som kommer in här. Någon som inte är mutad.
So I think it is that obviously the immune system and the inflammatory reaction and the healing properties of the body works much better at a higher pH. And that you are using this system, you are removing the toxic elements, that there are evidence that in a lot of countries now, they're adding toxins like fluoride and arsenic to the water. And particularly if people have been exposed to those kind of issues in vaccinations or in the food, that the body then has to remove those from the water that gets into the blood, which inflames the toxic load on the body, and it is designed to inflame the immune system to get symptoms of chronic disease.
Okay.
Yes,
but what exactly, because that's actually my next question, what exactly happens in the cells and the body when, because it's not just through the water, that like there's so many toxins coming right now into our bodies, and you say it increases the inflammation, but what exactly happens, what is the effect?
Yeah, so there's two different types of the immune system. There's the T cell based immune system and the B cell based immune system. But what actually happens is, what this was designed for was, like, if you got a cut, or if you were exposed to something like Neisseria meningitis or TB, and it managed to, say, go from the skin on your nose, like Neisseria meningitis, and break in to your bloodstream, the various elements, you have a rapid response of your body and you have a slower response of your body to get rid of the agent that comes in. So we know things like TB exists as a bacterium, and we know that Neisseria meningitis exists. And if your immune system doesn't kill them, you get diseases like bacterial meningitis that can kill you.
Yeah.
So the immune system is there to identify a toxic agent or an infectious agent, and then it basically calls in all the machinery of your immune system to alert the body that we have something poisonous. Now, I did some work and published on nanoparticles, that if you get exposed to metals like titanium or mercury or aluminium or iron or cobalt or selenium, different metals, that when they get into the bloodstream, which they can do, they also are sheathed with a protein, from the body, and the immune system also recognizes them as foreign. Now, why people are tired is the body then produces a lot of energy to get rid of these toxic materials. So it basically activates the immune system. But the immune system was designed in a healthier, cleaner world where you wouldn't be exposed to these things regularly. You'd only be exposed to something once. your body would, that's why when you we'll say sick, you get tired and you go to bed. But even if you were a child, that would happen over a number of days. Your body would clear out the toxic material or the bacterium, and then you would be healthy again. But what happens in chronic fatigue and immune-related symptoms is if you are perpetually exposed to these poisonous agents, two things are going on. Your immune system is going to remember them for life to try and get rid of them from the body because that's its job. And if you're eating them or drinking them, exposed to them in your food, you are going to be then dealing with them every day. So that's why you get symptoms like chronic fatigue. But what happens then in the body is if the immune system clears something, it can be that what they clear, they then generate this hyperimmune response. And the body then is looking for elements that look like what caused the immune reaction. That's a secondary response. Now, if they have a secondary response to your nerves or to something in your lymph nodes or in another organ of your body, so you can imagine, we'll say, if it was something that activated your reaction to the nerves, and then you would get symptoms like multiple sclerosis if it was induced by a bacterium or something in the environment. That when your body would break down the nerves or the cartilage in arthritis, as the cartilage breaks down, it releases more of the broken down parts of the body. And then the immune system reacts to get rid of that. And then you get a chronic stimulation that the body is diverted from reacting against the toxic agent in the water or a memory of being exposed to a toxin in a vaccine or in food. It then finds, it's called mimicry, something that looks like it in the body. And then the body starts instead targeting your nerve cell or your joints. And that causes then the chronic symptoms of arthritis or multiple sclerosis. And then the immune system uses a lot of energy to attack its own body. And that's why you then get the symptoms of the broken down organ and the body is exhausted from trying to eliminate its own tissue. And that tissue will always be there. So then you get chronic, that's what's called chronic, just perpetual arthritis, where your immune system is attacking your own joints or multiple sclerosis. So why a lot of symptoms of autoimmune diseases come in phases, particularly when people are stressed. They mightn't eat very well or in the wintertime. If they're tired and run down, the immune system isn't healthy. And so it then starts to not have the nutrients to keep the body healthy. It then starts to reactivate. It's attacking your own organ function. And then it's a vicious circle. So the more unwell and the more badly you eat, the less well the immune system works, the more you then have the symptoms of the autoimmune disease and the more tired you are. So that's why when we realized it makes sense in the immune system. If you can stop the immune system targeting your own body early, you will have less of a strong immune response to your own body. And if you can eat well and have vitamin D and K and the various, elements of nutrition, that allows the immune system to work well and keep you healthy, which will also reduce the symptoms. And then if you remove toxins from your food and your water, then you will have less chronic activation of the immune system through the food and water, and it dampens down the whole thing, as well as the alkaline element helping the immune system to work and the detox. Now, there is another element in water around the etheric element of water and around the reduction, which kind of takes more energy for your body to actually use the water and have the water in a structured way in your body for the enzymes to work. That also takes energy. So together, then it's a combination.
So many people in the community, they experience that, you know, when you drink bad water or with poisons that is not structured, they get tired. It's like a lump in their stomach, and it actually takes energy from your body. And then when they start drinking this water, the usual comment is like, well, a couple of weeks later, they just have so much energy. So the energy part, and I guess, you know, in my studies of the water, it's also got to do with the mitochondria in the cells, and like the activation of actually getting nutrition into the actual cells. Is that something you could talk about, like the actual cell structure and how important it is to?
Yeah, so this whole, exactly, the oxidation happens in these, they're like the energy little organs within everybody's cell. And a lot of the time, particularly with people who have been exposed to aluminium and glyphosate, is that they have inside the mitochondria little folds where the chemical reaction takes place.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what generates energy. You know, the way we know, like a plant has chloroplasts, and that does the photosynthesis to create the energy for the plant to metabolize food and to grow. Well, the mitochondria are the exact same little factories in our cells. They're like little beads or whatever within the cells, and they have this folded surface. And for the energy reaction to happen in those cells, they need a couple of things for them to work perfectly. And how they work, they actually give us the energy that metabolizes our food, but also gives us the energy to live. So if they're not working well, if they're poisoned by elements like heavy metals, which prevents the enzymes working properly, and also if the pH of the water makes the whole mitochondrial system not work, and if the water is structured, there is it's like the ether, right? It's only something I'm learning about, the structure of the water. And it's actually kind of has a very spiritual component, really, the etheric component and the structure component. But it actually means that if people are well, you know, and have literally are not stressed, so it makes complete sense, they're more relaxed. And if the water is structured more in line with the way the body requires it, so even the DNA has a structure, and the water that is the environment for these chemical reactions within the mitochondria to generate energy from food, and also to be part of the whole engine driving our bodies, that if those things can work well by proper nutrition, the water not been poisoned that interferes with the function of the mitochondria, and the structure of the water to be in a way that the enzymatic reaction within these little energy factories work well, then it makes sense that you get more energy from your food, and you're taking less energy from your body and also your healing energy to just metabolize the food that you are eating to do the basic functions of life. Yeah, that you require then, you know, once the water is the proper pH, there's no toxins in it, and it's structured to be in this etheric way that the body wants the water to be. The body is taking less of its vital energy to have the basic processes of life, and therefore people are not using the energy to do that, to just have the basic metabolism of enzymes, and then they are less tired. And of course, in parallel, the immune system isn't been activated, and the immune system isn't attacking itself because the pH of the water calms down the inflammatory response. So there's multiple things going on, but because of all those things, the body is less tired. And that's why people who really look after themselves, that have the predisposition to chronic fatigue and autoimmune symptoms, can just by adapting their nutritional status, their absorption status of the body, and the pH of the water, that the water is less toxic and properly structured, will feel better. It makes sense. So that's what we found with 20,000 people over my studies for 20, 30 years. Now, I had visited and studied Professor Chris Exley in England, who had shown about aluminium from the vaccines caused autism, and also that he discovered a silicated water could remove the aluminium. And that got me first interested in water, but that was only in 2016. So I've never actually done a clinical trial on water, but one of the things, and I know that's not what we're going to do here, but there has been many clinical trials now that show that the structuring of the water and the alkaline level of the water does actually improve the symptoms of people in autoimmune conditions.
Yeah, and that's, you know, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this, because when you see people, I see with my own eyes, and I've seen so many people just heal with this, just changing their water. And I'm so happy that you're joining us in this, and I'm really looking forward to, you know, seeing if we can do research together about it. But just a question to you about the future, what you think, what you can see both with the water, because you have, I mean, you have so much knowledge and so much expertise, and you're diving into the water aspect of immunology and health. And how do you see what is in the future? Like, what can we do as a water community, as a lot of people really wanting to highlight the importance of the water for our health? What would you like to do, and what kind of impact would you like to do with the water?
Well, thank you, Monica. So I suppose the last few years we've been working on accountability, right? As well as making aware people about the vaccines, as people know, in 2020 and 2021, and we've been doing that since. But then the last few years I've been working with you, Monica, in the World Freedom Alliance, and I know you have the great resign.com as well as your website. And I'm working on custodian.com. That's spelled with the DEAN at the end. So what we're doing in these years is, first of all, developing a mechanism in the law to hold people accountable in trial by jury. Now, the reason why that's, I think, important in the water, and I'm working on with you as well, Monica, an integrity project, is that one of the things we could do is, over years, measure the water that's in the tap water in our communities, and then identify if there are any toxic agents, and then using a knowledgeable water community, start to challenge, we'll say, in Ireland, the councils that are adding known toxins like arsenic, known poisons, to the water, by combining a trial by jury or accountability mechanism to have the general water for people healthier. But the other thing we want to do, of course, in the Integrity Project over years now, is to see if we can have a study to improve people's general health, and people who have been vaccinated or not, and people with chronic conditions, using the water as well as everything else. And I would say in a generation, you know, we will get all these poisons out of the water, so everybody will be healthy. And then using this water community will probably be worked together to, you know, pass out the information that really you can be very healthy with water. And as well as people find out that you can actually fast, and that is actually quite healthy for your body. But I would really recommend fasting, you know, as a process that people can look into, whether it's one meal a day, if they then help to detoxify themselves using the water. But of course, then the water has to be really healthy. So it's a combination of using the water to detoxify and to stay healthy. And then for the water community in each of our nations to see how can we then work together over a generation or whatever to remove the poisons that are being added to the water.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. And tomorrow we have Andreas Voss. He's one of the whistleblowers in Sweden, really sharing the situation. But honestly, it looks like, and I'm blunt with it, like, looks like we're poisoned through the water, because he's actually, you know, talked to the researchers, done the groundwork. I've been diving into the lakes and, you know, really showing all the heavy metals, all the damaging bacteria, and you know, so many, and also how they're actively putting like microplastics into the water when
I've looked into that. Yeah.
So it's and he's done so much work trying to get attention to it, but that's why we're like, we need to take care of the situation like urgently, because people are actually getting sick just very for no reason, just because of the water.
Yeah,
So,
and I published some papers around nanoparticles. So it turns out about 10 years ago. But why that's important is we knew they were doing things like titanium oxide in sunblock and in makeup, and in some elements of the food and water. And what that does is if a particle, whether it's plastic or metal or any particle, is less than 100 microns across, it can get into the cell. And if it's less than 70 microns across, it gets into the nucleus. But when a nanoparticle gets in, and we know there are many of them, Professor Antoinette Agati published the publication around looking at 44 different vaccines, and there was these heavy metal nanoparticles, really microfabricated, microengineered in the vaccine, but they were at a size that will get into the cell. But as they get into the blood, whether they're by injection or whether you drink them in water and they go in through your stomach or in through the intestine, the body then coats those particles with proteins.
mm-hmm.
And those proteins are then, the name for that, this is 10 years ago, the name for that coating was called a corona.
Oh my God, really?
In the nanoparticle field, right?
Okay.
But it turns out that exposes proteins from the body, little epitopes that wouldn't normally be there.
Mm-hmm.
And the body then mounts an immune response to the protein coating on the nanoparticle, which could be a plastic or a metal.
Uh-huh. I know.
And those particles are too big for your average component or cell of the immune system to get rid of, physically too big, so that the body sees them every day if they are in the water, and then tries to get rid of them, but exhausts itself, which then leads to this chronic autoimmune inflammation. The immune system is working to get rid of these metal particles, as well as there's an issue with these metal particles if those metals can be vibrated or resonated. It's like having ball bearings in your body, which can shear your organs if they are activated, which can be done by radiation or by different frequencies. So you can see that there's potentially a buildup. So it looks like they are adding these nanoparticle type components that when they get into the body, they will activate the immune system in the water. Now, that's why I've spent a lot of time on trial by jury, because you can measure what's in the water from your tap. And if there are elements in it that are microfabricated and have to be purchased by the water company, they are known poisons. It is unlawful and criminal to expose people to poisons, which are known poisons like arsenic and fluoride. So the combination of trial by jury and the law would be that a water community will say of people who wanted to get pregnant or who were pregnant could actually be involved in initiating an examination of the water and comparing it with the healthy water. And in a way, it's about justice that, families who aren't aware of the water, they will obviously be more ill than the people who are educated about water. And that is essentially unfair. So a lot of what we would like to do over the longer term is to remove the poisons from the water, so that everyone in our nations has access to healthy water.
Exactly. That's also completely our long-term goal. You mentioned like pregnancy, and how does that relate to the water? Because maybe some don't know about
so say if there's poisons like arsenic or aluminium or titanium, right? So what Professor Antoinette Agati, discovered was the size of them were particles that can get into your cells. But what Professor Chris Exley had been studied for many years is that aluminium can get into the brain. Now, what that does is it stimulates the immune reactions, because the body is trying to get rid of these particles, right? But they are designed to be bigger than the body can eliminate physically. So it means that if that goes into a baby, the baby's developing body is exposed to toxic physical particles that they can't get rid of. And also Professor Chris Exley showed that a lot of the aluminium particles and mercury went to the brain. and they are neurotoxins.
Mm.
So that how they're toxic is the body tries to get rid of them in the brain. So it's exposing an immune reaction and the debris of this components of the immune system that die trying to get rid of this toxic, aluminium particle. And that debris will then set up a cascade that to try and get rid of the dead immune material. And that will then kill brain cells in the developing baby.
Oh my God. Yeah. And also inflammation of the brain, right? So.
And it's also well known that, if you're exposed to heavy metals in your brain, you can be predisposed to Alzheimer's. So I did my PhD around, brain tumors and brain research, but you can eliminate the metal aluminium. Professor Exley showed by silicated water that then binds to the aluminium and it's removed and is measurable in the urine. But what he showed is that the aluminium was the same as the aluminium used in vaccines. And what Professor Gatti used is that these nanoparticles are being, put into baby and human vaccines, but they weren't put into cat vaccines, we'll say, because many of the cats were getting unwell and the owners were highlighting the issue. Now, the thing is, a lot of these are being used in food and being used in water. But from a perspective of law, if someone is procuring, we'll say, arsenic, that is a known poison, and there is no health benefit, and they're putting it into the water and people are being poisoned, then obviously everyone is accountable under the law, and you could set up a water community supporting a challenge to the owners of the water company and the men and women buying the toxins and putting them in the water, particularly if you were planning a pregnancy. They would be, or someone who was pregnant, because it's absolutely wrong for people who put on their taps in communities that are not aware of how poisonous the water can be, that they and their children are being poisoned just because they don't have this information.
Exactly.
Yeah. We in the water community, that's part of the longer term goal, Monica, that we're doing in the World Freedom Alliance.
Definitely.
Yeah, because in an example like that, you would just need one precedence case to get one water supplier for one city to have to take it out, because otherwise the people putting it in, the individual men and women who are being paid, would be liable for the harm caused to the babies and children in their private capacity.
I'm just thinking, I know you have to move on very soon, but I'm just thinking, Sanna, if you have any last questions, and also if there's anyone listening live, if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat, and we might have just one or two questions before you go. Is that okay, Dolores?
Perfect. Yeah, that's perfect.
Great. So, or you can just unmute yourself, and ask away if there's anyone here listening who would like to ask.
I just want to add, thank you so much for showing up in here and being our guest here in the Scandinavia with us, Dolores. It's an honor to always listen into you, and I'm not that very into water, but every time I listen to you or Monica or Sanna, it's intrigued to really, really get to know and understand the importance of water. So I'm so beyond grateful for the work you do, and incredible that you have put this together. So thank you. That's
thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you so much. That's lovely. And I guess the thing is that I think in a generation, and hopefully sooner, people will be much healthier. That actually, if we remember, which they don't, that my grandparents lived to be in their 90s and they were completely healthy. And we now have this sick generation. So I think the future, in whatever 5-10 years a generation, people will be much healthier, and we will be much healthier in the future. So that there's a huge world of health, I think, there, and not this whole huge business of hospitals and people being diagnosed with symptoms but not been treated. Oh,
Safiria is here. Hi, Safiria. Hi, and thank you so much, Dolores and Monica. So great and impressive information. So happy to hear that, Safiria. She might jump in and support you, Dolores. I hope so.
Oh, that's perfect. We know Safiria from Greece and the World Freedom Alliance, of course.
Exactly. Just the last thing. Someone is Oh, we can't hear you, Sophia. Sorry, it's too bad connection, I think. Someone was just mentioning post-COVID as a symptom, like, yeah, if you could talk about that just to end up, and how we, and I guess also, at least for me, I know the injured right now from the injections, if there's any advice there before you go.
So I suppose what we're trying to do, there's a lot of protocols around for the injured, the vaccine injured and post-COVID, but I don't think it's scientific for me to just say, well, this is working or that's working.
Oh, sorry, Safiria, you're breaking off. I think we can't, yeah, we can't hear you at the moment. Sorry, Safiria.
We've got to leave.
Yeah, so I guess the thing is, you know, what we need to do is to do it systematically, and it's very easily done around studying post-COVID, or now, of course, you know, we have to find whatever the causative agent is for COVID-19, right? Or whether that's actually adverse events from the injection, and then to do it scientifically, to take people who have certain symptoms and then systematically go through what would actually help them. So that's called post-marketing surveillance, or a phase 4 clinical trial. Now, but it's not as complicated as it sounds. It's just people to do a symptoms log, and then to volunteer for them to see what is actually going to help them. So you could do things like putting them onto the water to see if their symptoms improve. Or I would say interested in that people would just do a profile of the vitamins and minerals that they have, and then just to see if they can get the missing vitamins, whether it's vitamin K or D or C, from their food ideally, or if they then as a last resort needed supplements, and then see if they would improve as well. You know, so I think it's a very common sense approach. And then if we were to do that for a small, we'll say hundreds of people, and there was a protocol that really worked, then that could be rolled out into the wider community, and then people could give evidence. Now, there is very little in the real world, Manika, very little people rocking up to help us to run these kind of studies, even though we have the network to do it. So that's, you know, I think what people need to do is to gather together, as we do with Aga Wilson, also from Sweden, who's been amazing. And I know her organization, Can We Talk About It, is involved in this, and we're supporting them. But it's not that difficult to do. And I think water and detoxifying with water will be a very crucial component to keeping everybody healthy, but including those with adverse events.
Thank you so much, Dolores, for jumping on with us. I know you have to leave. You didn't have anything else, Sana, right now, but
no, thank you, Sana.
Sum it up, it's very, you know, common sense, right? We like get rid of the poisons, get good food, like nutrition, water, and like reduce the stress level, and really and the body is intelligent and will take care of you, right?
Yes, and I think what would be useful is, now we could do it, is that if people were going onto the water, to do a diary of their symptoms, you know, for a month before they get the water, and take photographs even for themselves, and then monitor their symptoms every month. That's what a post-marketing surveillance study is, or a phase 4 clinical trial, because sometimes people forget how unwell they were, even just to show themselves and their neighbors. But I do think that there's a real era of health ahead, you know, and it is all just common sense, Manika. And I'm delighted to be involved and learning more myself about water. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Dolores, and thank you everyone jumping on. Thank you, Sana, and sorry Tariq couldn't jump in. He's on Bali with a bad connection, but I think we're so happy to have you in our team, and we're looking forward to work with you in the future. Thank you so much, Dolores.
That's great. Bye-bye to everyone. Lovely to be with you today. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much. Bye.